You're listening to Mitiga Mike, a Cybercrime magazine podcast brought to you by Mitiga, the leader in agentic runtime security for cloud, SaaS, and AI, delivering zero-impact breach prevention. Learn more at mitiga.ai.
Welcome to the Mitiga Mike podcast. I'm your host, Brian Contos, Field CISO with Mitiga. Joining me today is Jess Vachon, award-winning multi-time global CISO. Jess, welcome to Mitiga Mike.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so excited. We first met and started talking just a couple months ago. And like within the first couple minutes, I'm like, oh, I've got to have her on the podcast. Great. Love her perspectives. So for our audience members that don't know you, maybe you could give a brief background about, who you are and what you do and sort of how you came up in cyber.
Sure. So I'm a 3-time global CISO. I've run programs Asia Pacific, Europe, South America, North America, Australia. I think that's pretty much everywhere except for maybe Antarctica. And that's
not a lot of people doing cyber in Antarctica.
Well, you never know. I mean, that's on my vision board, I guess, something I want to fill in. So I've been doing that for about 6 years, doing just security. But prior to that, I started at Cisco Systems as a network engineer, worked in healthcare, worked in manufacturing, leading whole IT programs. So I've been a practitioner, and now I'm a leader of those organizations. Outside of that, I'm the host of Voices of the Vigilant, which is a podcast on information security, where we try and elevate voices across the security community. And I'm also a Marine Corps veteran, which I think makes this job tolerable for me. I'm used to a lot of chaos and a lot of pressure and having to deliver on short timelines.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for your service and what a great background. It's always wonderful when you have CISOs that actually came up from that network engineering, maybe system administration, whatever it is, hands-on keyboard approach. We have so many different types of CISOs in our industry. It's nice to have folks that have actually done it and they know the difference between OSPF and RIP and BGP and things like that and can talk the talk, not just on the security side. So excited to hear your perspectives as we dive into this. So the first thing I really want to chat about is exposure. So it's no sort of revelation that organizations spend a lot of money on security people, redefining processes, certainly the technology and updates. It's just a big expense. But where do leaders today really feel the most exposed, despite all those sort of existing investments that have already been put in place, perhaps over decades and decades of having a security program?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a gap between tools and what the tools can see and where the attackers are actually operating. We try very hard to cover all those areas, but we're limited by budgets and we're limited by staffing and we're limited by combination of those two, which is skills to operate the tools efficiently. I think there's also a focus on what used to be the environment that we were protecting. So 2 years ago, or even if we go back 10 years ago, we were on-prem moving to cloud, and now we're mostly in the cloud. We've got SaaS heavy environments. Identity is federated everywhere. So it's hard to keep track of all that. And then now with Mythos, of course, we've got dwell time that's compressing, and the time it takes, the time we have available for our teams to react is gapped, right? So we're coming to this point in which we've got AI increasing the threat vector, we've got fragmented security measures in place, and what's coming down the road is post-quantum computing on top of that. So we're in a period of time where everything is changing for us, and those gaps that we thought might be there, those gaps are widening. And it's very hard for us to know exactly where those are and address those gaps.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up post-quantum computing. Isn't it interesting that we're living in a day and age where post-quantum computing isn't absolutely the number one headline and on the tip of everybody's lips when they're security shows? It's taken kind of second stage to AI, excluding certain circles, of course, but AI is like eating its lunch when it comes to marketing and PR. But I guess because it touches so many more aspects of our current lives, juxtaposed to post-quantum computing, which seems like this more ethereal thing that's so far away, but probably not quite as far away as one would think.
Yeah, I think if you asked people 5 years ago, they thought the same thing about AI, and then the news came out. Hey, we've figured out how to make it work and make it affordable, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes for those
Yeah.
listening. And I think it's going to be the same thing with post quantum computing. There's messaging coming out now that suggests that there may be some governments that have figured that piece out, because they're now advising start your inventory. If you haven't started it, you're already behind. So we're coming to a point in which we're going to have AI changing on a daily basis, and then the power of post quantum computing that's going to be added to that. It's going to be
Oh boy.
an interesting next 5 to 10 years for us.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe 5 to 10 months. Um, well, let's talk about risk. We've got all these wonderful things coming, and with good always comes bad, with light comes dark. It's just kind of how the universe is. But when we think of the risks out there right now, and again, coming out of some of the big security conferences, you hear probably like the three biggies people talk about. It's cloud misconfigurations, identity compromises, or these AI driven attack paths. What do you feel, if you had to take a look at those three, what's the biggest risk? What's the sort of the thing that most concerns you as a security leader?
Identity compromise.
Yeah.
I don't want to say 100%, but the data shows that's where the issues are. We could train our staff as much as possible, but they're still getting compromised, whether it's an email, whether it's smishing, they're still falling for these tricks. But we've got the identity of the human, and now we've got the identity of the AI, and we've started to get pretty good about controlling the identity of the human, but not so good at the AI, because it's come upon us so quickly that most of us don't have our eyes in that area, and now we have to. So that's definitely the area that I think I have the most concern in right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's the thing that's so challenging, I feel like, with identity is it's people aren't really hacking in as much as they're logging in these days. And finding something that's an anomaly to a baseline behavior is not hard if you're looking at a single system or a single user accessing a single application. But when you have dozens or hundreds of SaaS applications in a multi-cloud environment, and multiply that now times AI infrastructure, that can be really complicated. And I think we're seeing that, especially when we start to this discussion, and you alluded to this, is kind of that human versus non-human identity. And has that become the new sort of control plane, if you will, or the primary control plane for security overall?
Yeah, and I touched upon that in my previous answer. So I think, yes, absolutely. That's where most organizations are, you know, for lack of a better phrase, dangerously blind to the threats. Human identity, as I mentioned, we're pretty good there. We've got MFA, PAM, IGA. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of discipline around it. We know how to do it. It's a pretty mature area. The non-human identity piece that I mentioned previously, service accounts, API keys, CI/CD tokens, AI agents. Most of us don't have a good inventory in those areas, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the threats. And OWASP has touched upon this, right? They've
Yeah.
talked about offboarding being the number one identity risk. So we have that threatening us, and the tools that we had, again, 2, 3, 4 years ago, they just weren't built for the age of AI.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's funny when you said OWASP, I always think of the OWASP top 10. And I remember just years back thinking, yeah, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. These were the things that we're really concerned about. It's just changed so much. And the thing about these non-humans is, for ease of implementation and access and just sort of a reduction in headaches, they're all running with administrative privileges,
Mm-hmm.
and they're accessing systems that are accessing other systems and creating their own agents. Boy, it definitely is getting complicated very quickly. Let's kind of expand that and talk about on the investigation end. A lot of what's happening now is we're accepting the fact that, I don't think, again, this is new, but you can only prevent so much. And especially with the volume, velocity, and variety of attacks, whether they're AI enabled or not these days, it's a different speed than we've seen before. So when something happens and you do conduct an investigation, how important is it to have that sort of identity centric perspective when you're looking across all of your SaaS, all of your cloud, all of your AI environments?
Yeah, it's huge. So, you know, We look at that plane of data, it's fragmented. We have data everywhere, and our tools aren't keeping track of that data everywhere. Very few tools allow us to do that correlation piece between, a SaaS platform or an AI system. So um, that's creating a lack of investigation capability. Um, I think a lot of us are saying that we have that capability, but some of it's theater, which was okay up until a few years ago. And I keep pointing back to a few years ago because a few years ago things were going a lot slower, and now things are moving a lot faster. So we don't have that time to catch up. So that's definitely the area of concern. And what we need to do is be able to take all of that information and stitch it back together in a single plane or single pane of glass, so to speak, so we can see, what is actually happening and how is it correlated across the organization. Um, that requires a lot of telemetry, a lot of horsepower underneath the sheets, so to speak. Um, and we need the forensics that goes along with it. And that means taking a lot of data logs and storing them someplace for a long period of time. So as you can see, we've got a couple different things going on here. We've got the fragmentation, we've got the volume of the data, and then we have the lack of tools that are actually going to pull all this together quickly for us. And that's the key. We have to be able to move as fast as the AI is moving.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
Every security vendor tells you they'll stop attackers before they get in. But the problem is, they're already inside, and they don't look like attackers. They look like your users, accessing your SaaS apps, your cloud environments, and AI infrastructure. And that's why Mitiga built agentic runtime security across cloud, SaaS, and AI environments. This is a zero-impact breach prevention solution, because when attackers get in, they should get nothing. Let them come. Learn more at mitiga.ai.
And now back to the podcast.
It's funny, and I've just started noticing this actually over the last few weeks when I'm talking to partners or investors or engineers, everybody across the board. They always land on the data is so foundational to what we're doing, in addition to the speed at which we can derive intelligence for that data and act, because now we're talking about making decisions with maybe human on the loop, not in the loop, in terms of in seconds or minutes, as opposed to in days or weeks. And a lot of CISOs now are being much more cavalier, I'm finding, where if an attack happens, they'll block it right away. They'll go ahead and quarantine that asset. They'll disable that account. They'll kill the session, these types of things that are non-destructive, but would stop it. And then if they made a mistake, mea culpa, they roll it back and they can fix that. Well, it wasn't that long ago where we would never approach that as security leaders. It was always like, well, we'd rather let a few bad things in than stop somebody from doing legitimate work. But now it seems we have to be much more aggressive, and there isn't time to put that diligence in from a human perspective. And you're kind of depending on your tools to make that determination. And to do that, they need that rich data and they need that speed. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen in our industry.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because way back, security started with the absolutely cut it off. And then the business said, no, don't cut it off because we're losing dollars. And now they're thinking, if we don't cut it off, we're going to lose more dollars. So yeah, go ahead. We can just roll it back. And that's the safer way to go. And I agree that a lot of CISOs are moving that direction. It's a smart move.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, the boardroom when CISOs are having conversations with organizational leadership. And of course, it's going to come up, and it's coming up in almost every conversation across every business vertical. But are the current approaches to securing AI and LLMs, are they working? Do we feel like we've matured with security to the point where now we're introducing AIs and LLMs, but security matured along with it? Or are we still playing catch up? Are there still blind spots there?
Another good question. So we are playing catch up. I think we're in a better place today than we were a year ago because, you know, there's an understanding of prompt injection and what we have to be wary of there. There's red teaming um, frameworks that are now being developed and are available, and some of the AI model providers now are investing in guardrails in their products. So that's a positive. That's what we need. We need the community to come together. as defenders, we can't just do it ourselves. We need it to be baked into the products. And I think that's coming along. I don't think it's unusual in how it developed, because if you look through the history of other products, it's been like this. They rush the product to market. Then someone finds exploits or is able to cause security concerns through it. Then the vendors pull back and say, okay, now we've learned what we have to protect against. Let's start building that in. So I think it's getting better. We still have challenges around shadow AI in the organization. What are our users bringing in that they maybe have their own licensing for, which is a little bit of a challenge. But again, I think we're getting tools now that are allowing us to block or allow that access. So yeah, I think the vendors are getting there. I think the products are becoming more secure out the door, but we still have some room to grow on there.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I don't think it's all, Terminator apocalypse out there. So some people will say, I do see us improving, and I'm seeing that. I'm working with plenty of organizations that are taking the right steps, and it's so great to see organizations like OWASP and MITRE and NIST and others that have really embraced this in a very positive way in terms of, okay, these are the new things you have to take a look at. At the same time, it is kind of a bit of an arms race between nefarious actors and defenders, as it always is, right? As it always is. And we're in that phase where we're trying to catch up. And we saw this with mobile and social media and all sorts of other advancements. This one just seems to be a little bit bigger.
Well,
So
it's faster, right?
it's faster. It's faster and more pervasive, I guess, than anything else. One of the ways people are combating this, of course, on the defensive side is saying, well, should we embrace AI in a bigger way when it comes to our SOC? And I've heard some talks about autonomous SOCs, but more to the point, probably agentic SOCs, where they're leveraging these AI agents to take some of the heavy lifting or some of the processes, which AI is really good at, which is processing huge loads of data at a very quick speed, and then getting the human involved for some of the later steps. But what would it take, for you to trust an autonomous or an agentic SOC?
So the primary thing I need to trust those types of SOCs are educated staff, the experts on my team, the humans that know how the processes are supposed to work and what the outcomes are supposed to look like, right? Because we're going to bring in this agent, we're going to train the agent, we're probably going to monitor it as it's running in our environment, and then we may, if we feel confident enough, let it run independently. That's a lot of power for that agent to have in our SOC environment. So we need to have very talented, very well-trained staff that have real experience in running a SOC that are able to watch it. We are nowhere near being at a point in any organization where we can afford to let autonomous agents run unsupervised by unqualified people. That's just a recipe for disaster. They still have drift. There's still issues with the models. There's still injection issues that can be part of the complication. And, if you're relying on an agentic agent to run your SOC and you're not monitoring it, and a threat actor somehow gets access to that agent, they pretty much have the keys to the castle, right? They can make it look like they're not there, or they can make it look like all heck is broken loose. So absolutely, I'm interested in it. I will say that I'm exploring those options, but I'm being very cautious about it.
Yeah, I think that's smart. It reminds me of a few companies ago when I was at McAfee Labs, and we would do a lot of threat research and various geopolitical associated attacks and things of this nature. And there was a lot of false flagging, people that were, we would see attacks coming out of China, but it was actually Russians or North Koreans or something else or some other group. And sometimes real attacks would hide within the noise. So you'd see all this, oh, it's just a denial of service attack, or it's this or whatever. But at the same time that was going on, and you're kind of looking over here, well, over here is the real attack that was sort of getting in under the covers. And when you mention that on the agentic SOC, right? Wow, our agentic SOC is doing great. Look at it. It just blocked, 100 different attacks this week. Yeah, but it was the super secret quiet one that didn't get picked up because you put all your marbles in that one jar and said, oh, agentic will take care of it. I don't need to focus. I haven't seen a lot of people that are hoping that that's going to be the approach, where they get rid of all their SOC engineers, they replace it with some agents and hit go. it seems to be a collaborative model. And I think that's the future of where it needs to be. And to your point, it's going to be a crawl, walk, run kind of process. And we're too early to throw it all in there. So I'm glad you're taking that view. I think hopefully most CISOs are taking that view as well.
Yeah, I think they are. I think that conversation is being held more often now. Originally, I think everyone ran in and said, AI, we can reduce staffing, and then started using it and said, we can't reduce staffing because the AI goes, outside of the boundaries every so often. So we need someone who knows what those boundaries are to be there to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably will morph staffing, I'm guessing, over time. And also another concern with that is if you say, well, it's going to take first and second level support in the SOC out. Well, you sort of need the farm team to grow your junior people to become senior people. So if you get rid of that, fast forward a couple of years, now you have a blank spot, right? So we're going to have to find the balance like we do with everything in tech over time. But yeah, I think that's the right approach. It's not getting rid of people. It's, refocusing and realigning and sort of augmenting them with that AI.
Yeah, we have to protect the human supply chain.
Yeah. To protect the I love that. I'm actually going to steal that and make it my own now.
Okay.
So Jess, as we wrap up here on Mitiga Mike, Mitiga, our focus is really cloud detection and response, so CDR, and AI detection and response. So if we're looking for malicious activity, detecting it, stopping it, preventing, an attack from becoming a breach, so zero breach impact. From your perspective, and not necessarily Mitiga, but why do you think CDR and AIDR, these solutions, might be relevant for organizations moving forward today?
Well, CDR, hopefully most organizations have a solution in place for that. The AIDR is the newer area, and we need to have that as well. Now, I mentioned the fragmentation of the environments earlier, the amount of data, the storage requirements, and everything like that. This is the part where we need to pull it all together. It's moving fast. We've talked about that over and over during our conversation. We need a platform that's going to move just as fast, that is AI enhanced, that is human led, human monitored, and is going to provide the story for us in near real time to allow us to react in near real time and prevent the event from blowing out. Wherever it comes from in our environment, we need to have that correlation piece going on, that alerting piece going on, and the forensic piece in there as well. So, from what I know of your product covers a lot of those areas, and it's an area that CISOs need to be looking at for tooling.
Absolutely. Well, completely agree. And Jess, thank you for all your insights and input on this topic. You bring a very unique perspective on everything that is cyber and AI in cloud. So appreciate you being part of Mitiga Mike.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Mitiga Mike is a Cybercrime magazine podcast brought to you by Mitiga, the leader in agentic runtime security for cloud, SaaS, and AI, delivering zero-impact breach prevention. Learn more at mitiga.ai.